Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We will get you the top stories from India and the region. I'm Prasar Bharati, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, Benji Haya. Good to have you with us, Benji.
Good morning, 10 a.m. here in Washington, 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. We'll have the main headlines coming from Washington shortly, including relief for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, a potential extradition to the United States put on hold, and Donald Trump, the former US president, back in court for his first criminal trial, one of potentially 4 that he faces as he vies for the Oval Office again. All that in a moment. First of all, back to you.
Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi dies in chopper crash. Iran's Supreme Leader approves Mohammad Mokber as interim president. India declares a one-day mourning on 21st of May. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange receives huge boost. Can appeal against his extradition to US. Polling for the 5th phase of Lok Sabha election concludes across 6 states and 2 union territories of India. West Bengal records highest voting percentage. After serving in various positions in Iran's judicial system, Ebrahim Raisi entered politics and rose up the ranks to become the country's president. He was confirmed dead on Monday in a helicopter crash. Our next report tells you more about the late leader's time in office. Have a look.
After hours of search amid dense fog in a mountainous region, rescuers in Iran were able to find the wreckage of the helicopter carrying Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi, Foreign Minister Hossein Amin Abdullahian, and 2 top officials. With this, the worst was confirmed. All on board were killed. Raisi, who was elected as the president in 2021, was for long seen as a potential successor to the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Before entering politics, Raisi served as the Chief Justice of Iran. His short term in office saw various breakthroughs at the international level, including the resumption of ties between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Tehran also became a BRICS member. Just days before his death, India and Iran signed a deal to develop the Iranian port of Chabahar. With Ebrahim Raisi's death, Mohammad Mokber has become the interim president. An election is likely to be held within 50 days. Meanwhile, tributes from global leaders have been pouring in. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that he was deeply saddened and shocked. He added that Raisi's contribution to strengthening India-Iran bilateral relationship will always be remembered. UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan said that his country stood in solidarity with Iran in this difficult time. EU Chief Charles Michel also expressed his sincere condolences. Bureau Report, DD India.
Meanwhile, residents in Tehran expressed their shock over Raisi's death. They called the incident tragic.
When this happened yesterday and now this morning, when the news was confirmed, we really felt as if we lost an important support and weight.
It was really unfortunate news, not only for me but for many people in this country. After all, he is the elected president of the nation. The deceased was very active. They tried to follow up on things every day, and this saddened us more.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei announced 5 days of public mourning for President Ebrahim Raisi following his death in a helicopter crash and confirmed first Vice President Mohammad Mokber as interim head of the country's executive branch. Iran now has a maximum period of 50 days before a presidential election must be held to choose Raisi's successor. Iranian government convened a cabinet meeting on Monday as the country mourned the death of its president. Iran's first Vice President, Mohammad Mokber, who became the interim president, also attended the meeting.
This is a serious incident for all of us. It is sad and upsetting. But in the interests of our country and our people, we won't have any disruption. The country will continue moving forward under this leadership. Everyone should continue on with their roles despite this incident. In no way will this tragic incident interfere with the government and running of our country.
All right, indeed, India's Stuart Smith joins us from Baghdad for more details. Stuart, the Government Council of Iran convened an urgent meeting. Can you tell us some details regarding it?
Yeah, it was convened only a few hours after the announcement was made that the death of the Iranian leader was confirmed. Now, he is replaced by that vice president as an interim measure, to be clear. This will require elections for the new president to be decided. But in the meantime, that specific meeting you're referring to was a mixture of the judiciary, the government, and other parts of Iran's governing system to agree that, as the constitution states, this is the path forward that the institutions will take. This was fortunately laid out in the constitution, and that's exactly what's happened with regard to how these issues should be managed. In the meantime, while the government takes stock of what's happened and replaces officials that died in that crash and puts in other interim government members, for example, the new foreign minister, he's an interim person as well. In the meantime, funerals are already happening for those deceased, and there is a public day of mourning which will last for 4 more days in Iran, and here in Baghdad as well, a day of mourning for that president.
Okay, Stuart, first Vice President Mokhber will assume power as per the constitution. Now, he's expected to serve as caretaker president for some 50 days before mandatory presidential elections in Iran. How do you assess this?
Yeah, this is exactly what's laid out in the Constitution. A deviation from that would have been quite concerning and suggested that this was going to be more problematic for the Iranian government to solve than otherwise. But indeed, it's followed what is dictated in the Constitution. Recall that the president, while he is an incredibly important figure in Iran, is not the most senior figure. That role goes to the supreme leader. So in the meantime, indeed, now the vice president takes control, fills that role of the president while these elections are arranged, and that is one of his main roles. But he was saying earlier that his other main role, he believes, is to try and provide continuity and stability in a country which is reeling from this shock. But there are important things he can't do as the interim president. Ministers cannot be dismissed. A vote of no confidence cannot be passed against government ministers. Constitutional amendments cannot be proposed, and referendums can't be initiated. So it is a period where the normal rules don't apply, but so far they have followed what is outlined in the Constitution with regard to this emergency situation.
All right, Stuart Smith, thank you so much for joining in, and thank you so much for your analysis. Russian President Vladimir Putin held a phone call with Iran's interim president Mohammad Mokhber on Monday. Both stressed their mutual intention to further strengthen Russian-Iranian interaction. Mokhber was appointed interim president after President Ibrahim Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash. A day after Iran President Ibrahim Raisi, along with his foreign minister, died in a helicopter crash, the government on India on May 20th announced a one-day mourning on May 21st throughout the country. On Tuesday, the national flag will be flown at half-mast throughout India on all buildings, and there will be no official entertainment on the day. India and Iran established diplomatic ties in 1950. Under President Ibrahim Raisi, relations between the two nations saw a boost due to various deals and interactions. India and Iran signed a 10-year pact to develop the Iranian port of Chabahar. Iran officially became a member of the BRICS Forum. Pushing for greater use of national currency, India and Iran held discussions on using rupee and rial in bilateral trade. Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, can appeal against an order for his extradition to the United States. Benji Haya is in Washington, D.C. and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Benji, huge boost for Julian Assange.
It is. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange can get a full appeal hearing after the UK's High Court ruled that American assurances over his case were unsatisfactory. This was a short ruling. 2 senior judges said the US submissions were not sufficient, meaning a potential extradition stateside is put on hold. Mr. Assange's wife, Stella, expressed her relief.
Judges reached the right decision. We spent a long time hearing the United States putting lipstick on a pig, but the judges did not fly it. As a family, we are relieved. Fuck off me! As a family, we are relieved. But how long can this go on? The United States should read the situation and drop this case now. Now is the moment to do it.
Julian Assange is fighting an order that he be sent to the US to stand trial for allegedly leaking military secrets. The decision on Monday means he'll be able to challenge US assurances over how his prospective trial would be conducted. DD India's Ollie Barrett joins us live from outside the court in London. Ollie, thank you for joining us. This was sort of the last legal avenue for Julian Assange and his team as extradition beckoned. How much time does this decision buy him? Well, we are finding it hard to get contact with London. It seems to be quite busy outside the court there. We'll endeavour to return to Ollie Barrett for the latest on Julian Assange's case. But we'll move on now to news stateside, where Donald Trump is back in court in New York for the final days of his criminal hush money trial. Closing arguments will take place next week. The former US president is alleged to have falsified business records to cover up payments to porn star Stormy Daniels in return for her silence in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. He's pleaded not guilty to the multiple charges. Today, further cross-examination of Donald Trump's ex-fixer and prosecution witness Michael Cohen. Last week, Donald Trump's defense attorney Todd Blanche sought to portray Mr. Cohen as untruthful over an alleged October 2016 phone call. Mr. Cohen, who served as Donald Trump's personal lawyer for more than a decade, testified that his former boss ordered him to pay Stormy Daniels $130,000 in 2016. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, the focus of the International Criminal Court prosecution's arrest warrants that they're seeking over the war in Gaza, says his army intends to broaden its military operation in Rafah, in the south of the Strip, until it defeats Hamas and brings home the hostages. Mr. Gallant met with US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who was in the region over the weekend. He also held a meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The two men discussed the fighting in Gaza, increasing humanitarian aid in the Strip, and the return of Israeli hostages. The Russian military has taken full control of the village of Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region of Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement its forces had also been involved in clashes in Ukraine's Kharkiv region, repelling counter-attacks by Ukrainian forces. Russian forces earlier this month thrust into that region in what President Vladimir Putin claimed was an operation to create a buffer zone to protect Russia border regions. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who visited Kiev last week, promises more Western help is on its way for Ukraine as it fends off Russian incursions into its territory. Here in the United States, workers in the American city of Baltimore have begun to clear a crashed cargo ship almost 2 months after the vessel lost power and collided with, then downed, the Francis Scott Key Bridge, killing 6 people. The cargo ship, the Dali, will be moved to a local marine terminal. The crew, including 20 Indian soldiers, remain on board. In a preliminary report last week, federal investigators said that the Dali had lost power several times before crashing into the Key Bridge in late March. We are going to return to one of our top stories. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange getting a full appeal hearing after the UK's High Court ruled that American assurances over his case were unsatisfactory. Ollie Barrett, as I say, is outside the court in London for us. Ollie, this was sort of the last legal avenue that Julian Assange and his team could have pursued as extradition beckoned. How much time does this decision buy him?
Well, Julian Assange's legal team say that they believe it will be probably months before that appeal hearing is heard. They will need, of course, time to put their case together, but it does mean that until that point, Julian Assange will be staying in the United Kingdom and will be expected to stay in custody over that period as well. As you say, this would have been the last legal avenue in the UK that would have been available to Julian Assange and his legal team if this decision hadn't gone their way. We do know, though, from his supporters that if the judges hadn't granted him right to appeal and had said that the extradition should go ahead, that he was going to try and take his case to the European Court of Human Rights to get an injunction in place to stop extradition, although his supporters were also saying that they worried that actually if he lost this hearing today, the UK authorities may have put him on a plane very quickly indeed, too quickly, they feared, to take that case to the European courts. So several more months at least Julian Assange will be in the United Kingdom unless the United States were to have a change of heart and drop the case.
And Ollie, we touched briefly before on the context of this case. It's been a years-long saga. Just take us through how we got to this point.
It has indeed been years. It was 2010 and 2011 that the leaking of US documents took place by Julian Assange's WikiLeaks site that so angered American authorities, much of that relating to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Julian Assange insisted that it was a journalistic exercise, that it was entirely valid to release all of that documentation. American authorities insisted that it was very dangerous indeed and broke all sorts of laws in the US. But over that period, Julian Assange has in various different ways been trying to avoid extradition to the United States, where he had been saying he thought he ran the risk of facing the death penalty there, something that American authorities always denied. But he also spent 7 years inside the Ecuadorian embassy here in the British capital as he tried to avoid that extradition. We should say that his supporters, some of whom you'll be able to hear outside the High Court here in London, are absolutely over the moon at this latest decision from the High Court judges. As I say, they believe that it not just buys Julian Assange some more time, but also allows him to continue making the case that the charges against him, he believes, are politically motivated.
Ollie, thank you. Ollie Barrett for us live in London, and we'll keep a close eye on developments in that case in the coming months. For now, though, that's it for me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio.
Well, thank you so much, Benji, for those updates and your analysis. Well, now let's first get you with the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. Voting for the fifth phase of India's general elections in 49 constituencies across 6 states and 2 union territories came to a close on Monday evening. 695 candidates are in the fray for 14 seats in Uttar Pradesh, 13 in Maharashtra, 7 in West Bengal, 5 each in Bihar and Odisha, 3 in Jharkhand, and 1 each in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Special enthusiasm was seen among youth and women voters. The prominent candidates whose fate is being decided today include BJP leaders and Union Ministers Rajnath Singh, Piyush Goyal and Smriti Irani, Congress leaders Rahul Gandhi and KL Sharma, Omar Abdullah of the National Conference and Chirag Paswan of LJP. Polling also took place in Odisha for the second phase of assembly elections for 35 constituencies. The next 2 phases will be held on May 25th and June 1st, and the counting of votes will be conducted on June 4th. All right, and DD India's Ashutosh Mishra joins us from Odisha. Ashutosh, now that voting has ended, what's the latest you are getting for us? And quickly tell us about the latest voting percentage as well.
The latest voting percentage reports that we got by 5 p.m. because voting continued even after that. The average polling percentage was 60.55. That was the average polling percentage. And of the 5 Lok Sabha constituencies that went to polls, the highest voting was in Bargarh. It was 66%, slightly above 66%. Sundargarh recorded voting of more than 60%. So these two recorded more than 60%. Bargarh was the best. And we had polling also in 35 assembly constituencies, polling at these Lok constituencies. Among the assembly constituencies, Sonpur recorded the best polling percentage of slightly over 71%. So there was very enthusiastic voting in certain parts. There was stray incidents of violence in certain parts of Ganjam. And in one case in Raurkela and Sundargarh, there was some tension when a candidate of a particular party entered a booth. And finally, police escorted him out, so peace was restored. So barring these incidents, polling was by and large peaceful. In Kandhamal, parts of Kandhamal, which is a Maoist-infested area, there were some problems when a storm hit some of them. There was rain.
All right.
So polling was suspended or disrupted for some time. But very quickly, the power was restored and officials saw to it that polling resumed. And polling overall has been encouraging participation.
All right.
Okay. 70 actors taking part.
All right.
And of these, half were women and 20% were below.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for giving us those updates and for your analysis. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The 10th World Water Forum themed Water for Shared Prosperity officially opened Monday in Bali, Indonesia. The opening ceremony saw participation from global officials and UN representatives focusing on critical issues such as water conservation, clean water and sanitation. South Africa's former President Jacob Zuma is barred from contesting for Parliament. The country's top court ruled on Monday. The Constitutional Court found Zuma's 15-month jail sentence for contempt of court in 2021 disqualified him from standing in the May 29 election. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global.